The air in Draven City was thick with industry and despair. But in a small apartment overlooking the smog-choked skyline lived a beacon of hope. Marcus, a loving father, a dedicated worker at the city's main factory, his life revolved around his young daughter, Lily. Her laughter was his reward, her happiness his sole purpose. He worked tirelessly, his calloused hands a testament to his devotion. Every sacrifice, every bead of sweat was for her, for a brighter future, for a life beyond Draven's suffocating grasp. Marcus believed in honesty and hard work, in the inherent goodness of people. He taught Lily these values, nurturing a spirit of empathy and kindness within her. They were each other's world, two souls bound by love in a city that had forgotten the meaning of the word. Little did he know, Draven City had a lesson in store for him, one that would challenge everything he held dear, one that would push him to the edge and force him to confront the darkness within. Draven City, a place built on industry, was now drowning in it. Factories choked the skyline, spewing toxic fumes into the air. The air was heavy, a constant reminder of the city's decay. But the visible pollution was nothing compared to the invisible corruption that festered within. This corruption had seeped into every corner of life, poisoning the hearts of men and leaving behind a trail of broken promises and shattered dreams. The city's elite, the owners of the very factories that choked the life out of its citizens, operated with impunity. They lined their pockets with profits while the workers toiled in dangerous conditions, their lives deemed expendable. Justice was a luxury few could afford, and for those who dared to speak out, silence was the only answer. Marcus, blinded by his love for Lily and his faith in his own hard work, remained oblivious. He clung to the belief that his dedication would be enough to shield them from the storm brewing on the horizon. But the storm was coming, and it would not be denied. It would sweep through the streets of Draven City, leaving devastation in its wake. It would test Marcus's spirit, his morals, his very soul, and in the end it would leave him forever changed. The factory, Marcus's lifeblood, coughed and sputtered. It had once been a beacon of hope, a place where dreams were forged and futures secured. Now it stood as a grim reminder of better days, its once bustling machinery now eerily silent. Production slowed, whispers of layoffs spread like wildfire through the ranks. The air was thick with anxiety, each worker fearing the worst, their livelihoods hanging by a thread. The camaraderie that once united them was now overshadowed by a sense of impending doom. Fear, a constant companion in Draven City, tightened its grip. The city, once a thriving industrial hub, now seemed to be suffocating under the weight of its own decay. The streets were filled with anxious faces, each person carrying their own burden of uncertainty. When the axe finally fell, it was swift and brutal. The notice board, once a source of daily updates and community news, now bore the grim announcement of mass layoffs. Workers, some with decades of service, were handed their termination letters without ceremony, their dreams shattered in an instant. Marcus, despite his years of loyal service, found himself cast aside, another casualty in the city's relentless pursuit of profit. He sat on a bench, the weight of the termination letter heavy in his hands, feeling the sting of betrayal and the cold reality of his new existence. Despair, a bitter pill, settled in his gut. The walls of his small apartment seemed to close in on him, the silence deafening. He stared out the window, searching for answers in the bleak cityscape, but finding none. The weight of responsibility for Lily pressed down on him, heavier with each passing day. Her innocent eyes, once filled with joy, now mirrored his own fears. He knew he had to find a way to provide for her, to shield her from the harsh realities of their world. The job market, flooded with desperate souls like himself, offered no solace. Each rejection letter felt like a nail in the coffin of his hopes. The lines at the unemployment office grew longer, the faces more despondent, as the city's economic decline showed no signs of abating. Days turned into weeks, each one a frantic scramble for scraps, for any opportunity to provide for his daughter. He scoured the classifieds, made countless phone calls, and walked the city streets with his resume in hand. but the doors remained firmly shut. But Draven City, it seemed, had no room for sentiment, no compassion for those who stumbled. The bustling crowds moved past him, their lives seemingly untouched by the struggles that consumed his every waking moment. The walls of their small apartment, once a haven of laughter and love, began to feel like the bars of a cage. The cluttered space filled with memories of better times now seemed to mock their current plight. His daughter's once bright eyes grew dim, reflecting the fear that gnawed at his own heart. He held her close, whispering promises he wasn't sure he could keep, trying to shield her from the harshness of their reality. He had built his life on the foundation of hard work and honesty, but the city had shifted beneath his feet, leaving him teetering on the precipice of despair. The familiar streets now felt foreign. The industrial areas that once buzzed with activity now stood silent and abandoned. He was a drowning man, his lungs burning, his limbs heavy with exhaustion. Each day was a battle to stay afloat, to keep from being pulled under by the relentless tide of despair. He needed a lifeline, a miracle, anything to save his daughter from the abyss that threatened to swallow them both. In the darkest moments, he clung to the hope that somewhere, somehow, a glimmer of light would break through the darkness, offering a chance for redemption and a new beginning. Closed doors, open wounds, the sting of societal rejection. In a city that never sleeps, the relentless pace of life leaves many behind, forgotten in the shadows. Doors slammed shut in his face, one after another. Each rejection felt like a dagger to his heart, a reminder of his growing insignificance. Potential employers, their eyes cold and calculating, saw only a desperate man, his spirit broken by a system designed to crush. They dismissed him without a second thought, their indifference a stark contrast to his mounting desperation. Charity, a fleeting notion in a city consumed by self-preservation, offered no solace. The streets were filled with people, yet he felt utterly alone, invisible to those who hurried past. He was invisible, a ghost haunting the streets that had once been his home. The city, once a place of dreams and opportunities, had turned into a labyrinth of despair. The weight of his failures pressed down on him, crushing his spirit. Every step he took felt heavier, burdened by the memories of what could have been. Each night he lay awake, listening to the rumbling of the factories, a constant reminder of his inability to provide. The noise was a cruel lullaby, singing of lost dreams and broken promises. He watched Lily, her childish innocence fading with each passing day, and felt a rage build within him. The sparkle in her eyes dimmed, replaced by a growing awareness of their harsh reality. Rage at the city, at the system, at himself. His anger was a fire that burned within, fueled by the injustice and the helplessness he felt. He had played by the rules, had given everything he had, and yet here he stood, stripped bare, discarded like a broken tool. The promises of a better life had turned to dust in his hands. He had believed in the inherent goodness of people, in the idea that hard work and perseverance would be rewarded. He had once been filled with hope, a belief that his efforts would lead to success. But Draven City had shown him the truth. It was a place where dreams were crushed under the weight of reality, where the strong thrived and the weak were left to wither. It was a city that devoured its own, where compassion was a weakness and opportunity a privilege reserved for the chosen few. The streets were a battleground, and he was just another casualty. He was an outsider now, ostracized and forgotten, left to rot in the shadow of the very factories that had promised him a future. The city had taken everything from him, leaving him with nothing but the bitter taste of betrayal. A deal with the devil. Crossing the line of no return. This is the story of Marcus, a man pushed to the brink by circumstances beyond his control. Desperate times, as they say, call for desperate measures. Marcus was no stranger to hardship, but this time the stakes were higher than ever before. Driven by his love for Lily and fueled by the burning injustice of his situation, Marcus found himself at the doorstep of a man known only as Silas. Silas was a figure shrouded in mystery, a man whose name was spoken in hushed tones. Rumours swirled around Silas like smoke from the factories, whispers of backroom deals, of favours granted at a price. He was a man who thrived in the shadows, a puppet master pulling the strings of Draven City underworld. This was the underbelly of Draven City, a place where morals were fluid and opportunity came at a cost. It was a world Marcus had always avoided, a world he had hoped to shield Lily from. The deal was simple, brutal, and went against every fibre of Marcus's being. Silas offered him a way out, a chance to save Lily, but at a price that would haunt him forever. But the thought of Lily, her face pale and thin, her laughter silenced by hunger, choked out his conscience. He couldn't bear to see her suffer any longer. He would become an instrument of Silas's will, a tool to be wielded in the shadows. He would carry out tasks that would make his soul shudder, all for the sake of his daughter. He would do things he never thought himself capable of, would embrace the darkness he had spent his life avoiding. The man in the mirror was no longer the Marcus he once knew. The moment he agreed, the moment he accepted the weight of that choice, a part of him died. The man who had once believed in honesty and hard work, the man who had dedicated his life to his daughter's happiness, was gone. The man who had once believed in honesty and hard work, the man who had dedicated his life to his daughter's happiness, was gone. In his place stood someone new, someone hardened by despair, someone willing to do whatever it took to survive. In his place stood someone new, someone hardened by despair, someone willing to do whatever it took to survive. This was the day Marcus made a deal with the devil, the day he crossed the line of no return. This was the day Marcus made a deal with the devil, the day he crossed the line of no return, the day his transformation began. He was no longer just a father. He was a man on a mission, a man with nothing left to lose, the day his transformation began. The shadows welcomed him, and he stepped into the night, ready to face whatever came next. This was his new reality, a life forever changed by a single desperate choice.